So I wanted to talk a little bit about homelessness, and we're gonna actually go through a video. Um, and the reason I even know about this, I actually watched a video by Thought Slime, who I'm gonna put the link in the chat here. I would highly recommend watching the Thought Slime video because Thought Slime is fantastic and brilliant and funny and awesome, and will have a whole bunch of different takes than I do. Is that the link? I think that's the link. Yes. So
What do we
PragerU is
do
going to
about
teach
the
us
homeless?
about the homeless
This is one
problem.
of the most vexing public policy problems we face. If you live in a big city, especially on the West Coast, you literally face it every day. And every day it seems to get worse. Why?
I want to hear how PragerU answers this question. Why? Why does homelessness get worse? I have a funny feeling that I have an answer and PragerU has an answer, and they are not the same answer. But let's find out together.
Let's start with a couple facts. First, the word itself is misleading. Homelessness is not primarily a housing problem, it's a human problem. The primary drivers of homelessness are drug addiction and mental illness.
No, those are some of the drivers of homelessness. Mental illness and drug addiction certainly can be reasons why people wind up homeless, but so can being in an abusive environment, being in an environment that you don't enjoy. My youngest child was homeless for a while because he simply was not happy with the home he was in with my ex-wife. You can also be homeless because of things like, I don't know, economic problems. There's a weird thing that I don't know if they realized when they made this video, which, if I'm not mistaken, was like just recently. Let's just quickly take a look and see. Yeah, July 5th. So there's this thing that is happening particularly in the United States, called the eviction crisis. Yeah, off to a brilliant start. These guys, fuck. There's a million reasons people can wind up on the street, and pretending that it's like, well, either you're crazy or a druggo might be a little disingenuous.
According to data from UCLA's California Policy Lab, approximately three-quarters of people living in cars, tents, and on the streets suffer from serious mental illness, drug addiction, or both.
Now, here's a question for you. What came first, the chicken or the egg? And I asked that quite seriously. If we're saying that drug addiction is like a big thing for among people who are living on the street, and I don't doubt that it is it possible that the drug addiction isn't the thing that brought them to the street life, but instead is the thing that they use as a coping mechanism for the horrors of living on the street? I'm just saying, there might be more to this story than meets the eye. PragerU.
Second, despite these conditions, the homeless actually make rational decisions about where they want to live. Not surprisingly, they move to the most permissive environment they can find.
I would argue they tend to move. No, they. Like, I live in Calgary. Calgary is not a permissive environment for the homeless. And yet, surprise, we have homeless people here. It's not a permissive environment. I was going to say, like, I would assume that they might move to a place that, is more sustainable for their situation. But even then, like, when I say that, what I mean is, like, Kelowna has a problem with homeless people because Kelowna is a place that's warm, pretty, or a lot warmer than Calgary, and you can have a better quality of life on the street. Los Angeles, places like that. But realistically, even that's not true, because otherwise cold places would have nobody homeless, and clearly they do.
Make your city attractive for the homeless, and they'll beat a path to your doorway. The Venice Boulevard underpass.
That's all the big cities are just like, hey, let's attract homeless people. This would be awesome. I feel like this might also be a little bit of what we call the bullshit.
On the border of Los Angeles and Culver City brings home this point. It's one of thousands of concrete structures in Los Angeles County, but there's a curious detail. The Los Angeles side is full of tents, and the Culver City side is empty. Why?
Well, one of the things that Thought Slime explains in his video is the answer to this question. In in Los Angeles, they actually had a thing where they did somebody challenged certain aggressive anti-homelessness policies that were happening in the area, and it was basically ruled that yeah, that's not okay. You can't stop people from living in tents if there are no other areas for them to, like, if you can't live in a house or a hotel or a whatever, and your only option is to live in a tent, then government spaces you have the right to live in. It's not something that they're super thrilled about, but that's the constitutionality of things. So Los Angeles follows that constitutionally. Culver City does not. And a lot of the surrounding areas don't. They continue to maintain their anti-homeless stance and their nuisance attacks on homeless people. Which means that if you're homeless in that area and you've got a choice between, on the one side of the bridge, you will get harassed by people, and on the other side of the bridge, you won't. Guess which one you go with? That's right. But let's see how PragerU answers. I'm sure they'll have lots of factoids.
Because the two cities have different public policies.
No.
Los Angeles has effectively decriminalized public camping and drug consumption, while Culver
Decriminalized public drug consumption. I don't think so.
City enforces the law.
Enforces the law.
This
The law that constitutionally is illegal. Okay.
pattern that the homeless go where the policy environment is the most permissive can be seen up and down the West Coast. In San Francisco County, it's estimated that 30% of the homeless migrated there after becoming homeless somewhere else.
And, I wouldn't doubt that. 30% of the homeless migrating there after becoming homeless somewhere else. If you're homeless in, for example, a smaller place, it's probably less opportunity. If you're homeless in a colder place, getting to San Francisco might be a really positive move for your overall health and welfare. 30% is not a particularly high. I mean, it's a high number, but 70% is a lot bigger, and that's the number of people who became homeless there. So I don't really understand the point of pointing out this number, but okay.
In the city of Seattle, that number is 51%. The San Francisco Chronicle estimates that hundreds of homeless individuals move to the Bay Area each year because of the perception that it is a sanctuary for people who are unwilling to participate in programs designed to get them off and keep them off a life in the streets.
So Thoughtslime talks about this point, and the data that they're drawing from specifically says, like, no, this is, it basically uses these exact words to say there is a rumor that there are people who, what was it? There's a rumor that is spread that this is a sanctuary city for people who don't want to take part in these programs. Totally not the case. That's the reference they're making here, but they're just ignoring the part that was completely the opposite of what they're saying, which, sounds very PragerU-ish.
At first glance, this would seem to make no sense.
For good reason.
Why would an individual with no shelter or stable source of income move to one of the most...
Look, they drew a bum. He's got patches on his pants, and he's got no socks on. His shoes are nice loafers, but, he's got that scruff. Oh, PragerU. Like, somebody got paid to draw the most, like, milquetoast of all possible. Yeah, so they took a false point, and based a whole ideology on it. Attaboys. But yeah, someone drew this. Someone drew this with a computer and took time to, like, make a bum for PragerU.
most expensive cities in the country. But in the world of the homeless, it makes perfect sense. That's because they operate under a different set of incentives than the average citizen.
Sort of true. Kind of a weak argument. A different set of incentives than the average citizen. I mean, yeah, but okay. Let's see where they're going with this. Maybe I'm being...
In a research survey of homeless migrants in Seattle, 15% said they came to access homeless services, 10% came for legal marijuana, and 16% were transients who were traveling or visiting when they decided to set up camp.
Okay. Those are interesting numbers. 10% said they came for legal cannabis. You'll notice, and in Thought Slime's video, he says that they specifically don't mention the fact that these were all like, you could have more than one choice. Why did you come to Seattle? It wasn't like someone said, "Oh, that there was legal weed and that was the only reason I came to Seattle." So this 10% number actually represents 10% of the overall homeless who were like, "Yeah, legal weed's cool." But that wasn't necessarily the reason they came to Seattle to be all homelessy. Just bad.
But this dramatically understates the biggest draw of all: the de facto legalization of street camping, drug consumption, and property crime.
Gotta love Seattle, where you can legally camp anywhere you want. You can just sit on the street, banging rails of crack, heroin, shit, and just, steal and torch buildings, right? Because BLM taught you that, right?
As former Seattle Public Safety Advisor Scott Lindsay has shown, the city is now home to a large population of homeless, prolific offenders. People who commit property crimes to feed their addictions, but are rarely held accountable for those crimes by the criminal justice system.
Bender, yeah, this is an awesome example of taking a part of a study and highlighting the portions of it to push a rhetoric. Absolutely. This concept here shows a guy presumably stealing a car so that he can get the druggos and there's no legal consequence. When in fact, this isn't the case. If you steal a car in Seattle, that's illegal. If you break into a car and take stuff, it's illegal. However, it's also really difficult to prosecute. It's really difficult to catch. Cops don't care a lot about property crimes like this because if you catch a guy breaking into a car, cool, whatever. But if you don't catch him, you're basically screwed. Here in Calgary, my buddy was going through. He had a real like 2-a-week habit for car stereos. The neighborhood he was living in, they were constantly just disappearing out of his car, and his insurance company started getting annoyed at how many times they were replacing it. So they basically said like, okay, we'll replace it one more time, and this is the last one. So he went and mounted fish hooks onto the back of it. And a couple days later, first thing in the morning, he goes to hop in his car, and there's an 11-year-old kid stuck blood running down his hand, crying in his car. And the kid had come along, reached back to push out the stereo and hand on fish hooks. So buddy calls the police. The police show up. And they explain to him that he's actually guilty of assault. This was clearly an intended result of mounting fish hooks on the back of his car stereo. It would be up to the parents to press charges because the child is a minor. Nothing ever came of it, but the police weren't interested in catching this person and setting up a stakeout and like, okay, we got 3 guys on the street and they're all in like undercover gear. We're going to catch this 11-year-old kid who's stealing car stereos. It's the same. Nuisance crimes are, if they see you spitting on the street, they'll freak out at you and write you up a ticket or whatever. And our police do target homeless people for aggressively targeting them to make sure that they feel uncomfortable being homeless, especially in areas where homeless people are not typically found. Like wealthy areas. They tend to make sure they migrate into certain areas. And I mean, the police make sure of this. The idea that like there's no consequence is ridiculous. Homeless people are constantly berated by the police. It's just a very real fact that the size of a police force necessary to ensure that no property crime ever happens is impossible. Absolutely impossible. I am Canadian. Nuisance crimes are by definition nuisance. Exactly.
So, is ever increasing homelessness our inevitable future?
No.
If our goal is to make life as attractive as possible for the homeless, the answer is yes.
Oh, here's my. I'll be right back. Hey, come on in.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good.
Excellent.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, sure. Do your thing. You can do that too. All right. Sorry. Rich folks pay taxes. Taxes pay salary. Where's my head? Homeless people are a nuisance. Yep, 100%.
If our goal is to actually help the homeless, the answer is no. Houston Mayor Sylvester Turner is a Democrat, but his approach to homelessness is a world apart from his counterparts in Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Seattle. It is simply not acceptable for people to live on the streets. It is not good for them, and it is not good for the city, Turner has said. Houston's policy is a perfect example of what Turner calls a tough love approach.
Tough love. I really enjoy the accidental mask off when, especially when they're like, he's a Democrat. Isn't that amazing that Democrats who are, wussy would want to stand firm in the face of the homeless? Yeah, it's PragerU. That says a lot. A tough love approach. It's unacceptable for people to live on the streets. Well, then how are you going to deal with that? Because if I personally agree that it's unacceptable that people live on the streets. And if I was the boss of the world, I would absolutely do things to not have people living on the streets. Like I would make housing available for them. I would ensure that they had access to services, not just like, a once a year counseling session at a police station, but like actual mental health services, actual services that might, I don't know, help. These are wacky ideas, and they're not Democrat ideas. Democrat ideas are we should put them in jail, and that way they have a home. So let's hear about our tough love approach.
The city has built housing for the chronically homeless, formed a
Okay.
coalition of nonprofit partners, and lobbied the state government for more mental health and addiction services.
Oh, so
At the
that
same
surprises
time,
me.
Turner has enforced a strict ban on public camping and promoted a citywide campaign to discourage citizens from giving money to panhandlers.
So there's the rub, right? So they do have the setup that says, yeah, we're going to make housing available and but we're also going to make sure that, anyone who we haven't got, we're going to discourage you from giving them money, and we're going to make it so they can't camp anywhere. Because, what would Jesus do?
The results are as instructive as they are stunning. Over the past 8 years, Houston has reduced its homeless population by 54%, while it has skyrocketed in West Coast cities. Different policies, different results.
Do you notice that this video isn't actually saying what it thinks it's saying? Like, one of the things that it's saying is that people go to the places where they have the most permissive attitude towards the homeless, and it sounds to me like Houston has a pretty permissive attitude towards the homeless, and certainly their rates dropping are hopefully indicative of a reduction in the overall population of people who require those services. Hopefully, but they also described that it would be permissive to just be a homeless in Los Angeles, where there's just no consequences whatsoever for homelessness, and you can just do whatever you want, rape, murder, kill, whatever. It's cool. And they provide all these statistics that show that like people are coming there homeless because it's a way better life. But wouldn't it be a better life to go to Houston? I don't know. I feel like they're not making the right pitch here. If you're a dog, you hear the dog whistle. If you're not a dog, you see the irony and the bullshit inherent in this socialized analysis and helpful narrative. Yep, it's PragerU. PragerU.
Where a Seattle politician opposes hosing down feces-covered sidewalks because hoses are racist.
Okay. Speaking of dog whistles, this isn't true at all. Apparently, what actually happened was, and this was like several years ago, I think like 2017 or something, Seattle had a homeless encampment that smelled. Not a big surprise. Yeah, they lied. It's a fact. So this homeless encampment smelled, and the politicians wanted to like turn pressure hoses on the camp. Not like, work with people to clean it, but literally just, okay, we're going to turn on pressure hoses and hose the fuck out of the space. And that's a thing. And this one politician was like, no, that's not okay. Like, you will destroy these people's few possessions. You will hurt them. And also, there are other ways to go about cleaning it. And the comment, hoses are racist here, is just a bullshit rejig of what he actually said. And what he said was, turning the fire hoses on your population kind of feels a lot like, the bad guy's side of civil rights. So he wasn't saying that hoses are racist. He's saying that, hosing your population down because they're doing things you don't like, maybe not the best idea.
Houston fights in the courts for the right to clean up encampments.
Seattle just wants to smell like human poo.
Where California progressives push for more drug injection sites and have decriminalized thefts under $950.
No, they have not. They have not decriminalized thefts under $950. They've actually passed a rule that says that thefts under $950 are... Oh, crap, what's the thing? The word. Instead of it being a criminal matter, it's where they give you a fine instead. So it's still illegal, and you can still go to jail. Misdemeanor, that's it. They're misdemeanors. You can still go to jail, but they're not a criminal charge.
Houston imposes consequences not only for theft, but for aggressive panhandling, window washing, and other street obstructions.
Oh, window washing. Those fuckers. Can't believe someone washed my window.
As this Texas city has demonstrated, local leaders in cities of any size can meaningfully reduce homelessness through a strategy that mixes compassion with common sense enforcement. If cities stop allowing public encampments and open drug consumption and start prosecuting property crimes, they will have much more success redirecting the homeless away from a life of self-destruction and toward a life of hope through mental health treatment, drug rehab, and job training. That's what we...
So, again, PragerU's idea is we want to help the person. We want to help them get off the streets, help them get off drugs, help them get mental health services. But PragerU is an ultra-conservative group, and what are their stances on things like legal injection sites or... so legal injection sites or funding for welfare, drug addiction policies, access to mental health. I think I know the answer. And his little O face here, which was an accident of hitting pause. Oh, he's full of shit. There's no accountability in America. There is, however, a bunch of thugs and crooked strongmen in power. You can help the homeless by putting them in prison. So easy. They say they want to help, but they are actually advocating is making them criminals and putting them in prison. The words are bullshit. The actions are criminal. How can you tell when he's lying? His mouth is open. Totally.
all want, isn't it? So why don't we do it? I'm Christopher Rufo, Senior Fellow at the Manhattan Institute for Prager University.
This video was made.
I love Prager University. And by that, what I mean is I don't love Prager University, but I think it's a brilliant thing that our world has PragerU in it so that we can always be reminded that no matter how ignorant we are, we can always be worse. I find this whole thing remarkable. Like, not just the cherry picking of data. And again, watch the Thought Slime video. He goes into a great deal of information that I don't go into here. I was just sort of reacting to based on what I know. But it's amazing to me the spin on things. In my mind, the answer for homelessness is not criminalization of homeless behaviors and activities. It's certainly not, especially in a city like Calgary, where all winter what we see is homeless camps being smashed and their tents being taken and their sleeping bags being taken by the police, because that way they just will stop being homeless if they just don't have a tent anymore, right? No, this is wrong, and it's morally reprehensible. And the thing about like the Seattle, again, with back to the fire hoses and cleaning off the messy floors. Vancouver had an interesting reaction to because if you've got a homeless population, then you have waste materials, you have poop, you have pee, you have problems, right? And in Vancouver, pre their eradicating the homeless population for the Vancouver Olympics, one of the things that they encountered was they were having problems with rats in the downtown area. Rats that were going through the alleys in like Hastings and whatnot, walking through poop. And then going into restaurants and, being rats and doing rat things. And it turns out poop in general is not something you want to eat. But poop that's, from a homeless camp is actually worse. Largely because of lack of access to legitimate health care and all kinds of things. So Vancouver made a very smart choice. And they were like, how about, instead of this, we put up free fucking access public toilets downtown. And everyone went, but the homeless will use them and ruin them. And they were like, yeah, the homeless will use them. And then the rats won't be walking through poop into your food. It's good. There are always solutions to problems. Criminalization is not the solution. He's the senior fucktard at the Manhattan Institute. I love those names. They always have names like the Manhattan Institute or the Beckman Institute or just, some bullshit. They never call it like it is, which is like the We Hate Poor People Institute. Now I'm gonna present an interesting thought that I had when I was thinking about this whole homelessness thing today. And I watched. There's actually a new Philosophy Tube video. I'm not sure if my people who are watching watch Philosophy Tube, but if you don't, you should start. Philosophy Tube is phenomenal. And Abby has a new video out where she talks about social constructs. When I make the little versions of the video, I'll put it up in there and it'll go, whoop, check out this video. But yeah, definitely was a really good video talking about social constructs. I know what social constructs are, but I've never really put a great deal of thought into social constructs, so I found it really interesting. And it made me think, while thinking about this topic of homelessness, that ultimately homelessness is a social construct. Because we are not imbued with homes by the, governing body of the universe. We don't get homes for free. A home is an optional thing. I think about Townes Van Zandt, who was homeless for like 4 years, but never was homeless. He just spent 4 years traveling around playing shows and staying at people's houses. Over those 4 years, he didn't pay rent anywhere, but technically would be considered homeless. But specifically, when we're talking about homelessness as something that is different than what we have, which would be homefulness, I guess. It's a meaningless social distinction. So, I live on Treaty 7 land. The indigenous people who lived on Treaty 7 land actually would have qualified, I think, as homeless, in that they didn't have a fixed address They were mostly nomadic, from what I understand, mostly nomadic and hunting, in large territory, hunting buffalo and other animals for their survival. So they didn't, build giant metropolis cities and stuff. That wouldn't have been considered a problem at the time. It's considered a problem now to not have a home simply because not having a home is a cover all for a bunch of social problems that we don't necessarily want to address, like mental health and drug addiction and failing economy and unrealistic rent expectations and ridiculous growth of the city with falling apart infrastructure in the middle as we build our way out. So we don't like talking about those things. So we just go homelessness is a problem. The best solution to a problem is just to not have it. So if we could just not have homeless people, that would be super duper awesome cool. That's not real, right? Like, what are the actual qualities of homelessness? Well, you can be homeless without any of those things. You don't have to be a drug addict. You don't have to be mentally ill. You don't have to be anything. You don't even have to be poor. You could just be a person without a home. There's no intrinsic quality. We could imagine a world where homeless isn't a thing we have to consider as a social construct. That could be because we have no value placed on homes. We go back to a nomadic existence, but it could also be because we make homes available, and we have homes for people that they can live in and have access to services. Because as soon as we got rid of homeless as the social construct, those things that we actually don't like still exist. So we would then have to come up with new labels for, instead of it being homeless people who are a problem, it would be people who have homes but are mentally ill, or people who have homes but are not working, people who have homes, blah, 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 blah. And then we would tackle each of those individual problems. The easiest thing to do is to lump all of those things, all of those social problems, under the social construct of homeless and go, yeah, ain't that about a bitch? How are we going to fix it? Well, we could give them homes. Oh, that's crazy. That's crazy. Why would you give people homes? They didn't earn it, right? The simple answer is because that is proven to be the most effective way to make those people's lives infinitely better and allow them that opportunity to move forward in life, in terms of whether it's addictions counseling or mental health services access or what have you, or employment, or blah, 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 blah. All of those things are a hell of a lot easier when you have a home. And especially when you have a home where you're not constantly in perpetual fear that you're going to lose that home. But I'm a socialist. I thought it was interesting. The idea that homelessness is a social construct. I'd never thought about it like that before. First off, I want to say thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed, please like and subscribe. It really does help me out. Thank you to my patrons that support me on Patreon. First, to the followers. Thank you to I Am Canadian. The prophets, those who receive the whispered truths before the masses. Special huge thanks go to my one prophet, Shithead Dave Anderson, the gods. This tier is the most expensive and likely to never have any members, but Patreon really told me I should have one, so it's true, I guess. There are no gods. If you want to be a patron, head over to www.patreon.com/BigUglyJim and sign up, and you too can get a hearty, rousing, full of love thanking. I try to put up stuff at least once a week, and I live stream every Saturday at noon Mountain Time on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook, like an old man. Again, thanks for watching, and have a kick-ass day.